This is Minder Chen from CSU Channel Island. In this module, we're going to talk about business process reengineering principles and the methodology for conducting a business process reengineering project. First, let's review some of the principles as laid out by Mike Hammer in his Harvard Business Review article called Reengineering Work. And one of the first principles is organizing around outcome, not task. This implies that we have to actually identify the customers of a business process and ask them exactly what they want out of this business process. So we will not be focusing too much on the existing tasks that we will do, but putting our focus on the final outcome. We'll come back to this principle later. And another way to engineer a process is considered let those people who need to use the output of the process to perform the process. And this is probably can refer to as a self-service concept. For instance, a lot of us has been to Amazon.com to purchase books or other stuff, and we are actually the order entry clerk for Amazon. Amazon is not paying for us; we're actually paying Amazon, and we're happy to do this, and because we can make sure that everything has been entered properly, and this kind of self-service is pretty widely available. The AR technology can help us to make it easier for the end user to perform the process and to receive the outcome out of the process. Through a lot of data capturing technology, it's probably a good thing to capture the information at its source and only once, so we don't have redundant data entry. And once the data has been captured, we want to process the data right there when the work has been performed, such that the information can be used to support those people who are performing those jobs. And because of that, the decision has to be given and move to the frontline worker who actually are dealing with the customer and need to address the customer's problem right on the spot. One way to speed up a business process is to try to conduct some of its underlying activity in parallel. But while you're doing certain activity in parallel, there will be an integration problem at the end. One way to prevent the problem of not being able to integrate work from parallelly process activity is to try to integrate the result from those activities constantly from day one. As example, Microsoft, when they build software, even in the very early stage of development, they would try to integrate various modules into a big version and test it out to find out whether there's any problem and in terms of various modules working with each other. If there's a problem, they can identify it early on and try to resolve it. So there will be no surprise at the final integration stage. Last, not the least, is try to treat geographically dispersed resources or operation as though they were centralized. Let me just give you an example here. For instance, Hewlett-Packard used to manage its purchasing functions in a very decentralized fashion. The benefit of this approach, totally decentralized version, is that each local operation has the flexibility to order what they want at a time when they want it. And by the way, this This icon means local site, and this is supplies factory. This high-rise building is a centralized purchasing office at headquarters, and this is the central warehousing facility. But this, in HP's case, this decentralized approach has its problem, because they're not getting the volume discount from the vendor as it deserves. So instead, what HP has done is to centralize the pricing and negotiation with major vendor of various product or service that they need. However, they allow the local office to determine their purchase timing and the quantity. So the purchasing has been decentralized, but the pricing and negotiation of contract has been centralized by the central purchasing office. There are other configurations that you can consider in terms of how we should take advantage of some centralized planning, and also taking advantage of the flexibility for decentralized execution. Here's a framework for business process engineering. It's not just about process or technology. It's also about looking at the structures and the job skill of the people within an organization. And on the technology side, we need to look at the enabling technology, the overall IT architecture, and the method and tool we may use, and the structure and organization of the IS department. On the process side, we try to focus on the core business process, which would add value. And most of those processes probably will be customer-facing processes. And it certainly will be very useful to bring innovation in our redesign process. We mentioned earlier that in terms of organization, we need to look at employees' job skill, whether they need to be upgraded and retrained, and also the organizational structures, the rewarding structure to foster a culture that encourages change, and eventually to bring value to not just the employee, but also the customer. This is a version of a business process reengineering life cycle that I created. And it's a 7 steps process. The first step is visioning. Try to identify the corporate vision and identify business goal. The second step is to identify the core business processes that we are going to re-engineer. So in this stage, we need to identify those processes and prioritize it and decide which one deserve our attention for re-engineering project. This 2-step is considered part of the enterprise-wide re-engineering initiative. And once we identify a specific business process, then we start to follow the following 5 steps in this re-engineering methodology. The first in this 5-step approach at the process specific level is to first analyze and measure existing process. Second is try to redesign the process by identifying enabling information technology and generate various design alternatives. After that, we would evaluate those design alternatives and find out what would be the best possible solution, and eventually implement those re-engineered process and make sure that it will be acceptable to the organization and by our customer. And after the process has been re-engineered, we want to continuously improve the business process to keep it up to date. And there will be always feedback loop to the previous steps, and it will be an ongoing process. Another important thing during this reengineering life cycle is manage the change process and also paying attention to various stakeholders' interest. And this actually effort has to be done from the very beginning. Don't just do it during the implementation phase. To identify business process, high-level business process, we can use Michael Porter's value chain model, and particularly the primary activity, which include the inbound logistic, operation, outbound logistics, sales and marketing service. And for certain organizations, even the supporting activity can be a core business process. For instance, a consulting firm. For a consulting firm, the human resource may be a very important business process. And for IT-intensive organization, technology deployment become an important business process to consider. A company like Walmart do a lot of procurement from all over the world, and the procurement process could be a very important business process they want to re-engineer in the first place. Once we identify some of the business process worth considering for business process engineering, here are some criteria that we can use to prioritize those business process in order to select some of them for re-engineering project. The one that broken, pretty obvious. The one that create bottleneck and slow things down. And business process that tends to be cross-functional, cross-organization unit, even inter-organizational business process tends to face a lot of challenge and problem, and that's a potential candidate. Try to identify core business process that may create high impacts and generate great value to the company. Business process that are customer-facing, used by the frontline employee, is what we usually call it the moment of truth, which means that's when you really want to have a good business process handling the customer requests to give them a good impression. Business process that add value to the company, certainly worth paying attention. And don't forget about creating new business process and services. Last is to consider picking the business process that are feasible. And certainly we want to pick very challenged project and which will have great reward, but at the same time, for a re-engineering project, sometimes it's worthwhile to pick the low-hanging fruit in order to build up some successful case. It may not be a huge project, but that success of the low-hanging fruit will build up our credential, which allowed us to work on some long-term and harder problem and business process in order to achieve a long-lasting success. So picking the low-hanging fruit is one of the strategies that you certainly want to consider while selecting business processes. But remember, don't just pick the low-hanging fruit and nothing else, and that would just defeat the purpose of picking the low-hanging fruit. Once we identify a process, we want to collect data about the process, including its customer's requirement, who are the supplier, their qualification, and try to stretch the business goal that we want to achieve. Will force us to be innovative, and we will try to measure the performance data for the process, including the unit cost, cycle time, reliability, defects rate, etc. Additional system constraints need to be taken into consideration in terms of budget, legal environment, etc. And here are various metrics that we may use to measure business process. We talk about cycle time, processing time, unit cost, and quality certainly is another metrics that we should consider. In the redesign phase, there's two ways to think about how IT may come to play within the reengineering project. One way is to truly understand your business and business need, and then identify what information technology can be used. However, there's a kind of, we call it technology-driven approach, which will explore some of the emerging technology and see where we can apply it within the organization to re-engineer some of the business process. And personally, I think business pool make more sense, but occasionally using the technology-driven approach may help us to find out an opportunity to apply appropriately some emerging technology within the organization. Here's a summary of some of the enabling effect using information technology. And from the organizational entity dimension, information technology can facilitate interpersonal, interfunctional, or even interorganizational interaction and operation. And the higher up you go, the more challenge it is. And here's some example for each of type of business process here. And this is their enabling effects. The second dimension is the type of object we're dealing with. The process may focus more on the physical object or just purely on information or knowledge. Dealing with physical object like in manufacturing setting does require a lot of information and information technology, but it's a little bit easier to handle because they are visible. Some of the managerial process, like we identify here, tends to rely on information and information only, and it's less visible, so it takes great effort to identify the information needs and redesign the process accordingly. The third dimension is the type of activity, which can be operational level, like order processing, or managerial process, such as developing an annual budget. So it depends on the type of dimension, the three dimension, and also where the business process you're dealing with. Are they interorganizational? Are they dealing with physical object? Or are they a operational or managerial activity? The challenge will be different, and we need to consider the various enabling effect of IT in that particular context. Here's just a list of some of the existing or emerging information technology, from collaboration technology to mobile computing, some data capturing technology, particularly like RFID. Telephony is a system which allowed us to integrate computer and telephone system, particularly using voice over IP, and sometimes we call it a unified communication system as well. Web services and service-oriented architecture allowed us to integrate various components remotely to offer better service. Imaging, workflow, business process management software can also help us to streamline business process. Another category is what we used to call decision support system, data warehouse, business intelligence using data mining, and data visualization. Sometimes we call it digital dashboard. And also a buzzword right now to call big data. All fall into this category. Another major initiative in a lot of organizations is the use of enterprise resource planning packages, as well as customer relationship management and supply chain management software. And in this course, we also would emphasize quite a bit of discussion on electronic commerce based on World Wide Web and internet technology. Cloud computing is another emerging trend which is worth paying attention. And Web 2.0, which is really the development of architectures for user to participate in terms of data, problem solving, and the creation of new content using the World Wide Web technology. And social networking tool certainly is considered part of the Web 2.0. It's getting a lot of attention lately. Once we have various design alternatives in terms of redesign of the process and the IT enabler that we're going to use, we will consider if we need to evaluate those alternatives based on cost, benefit, and don't forget about the third criteria, which is the risk. Newer technology, emerging technology will be riskier, but certainly the reward can be greater. And costs usually are easy to identify. Just make sure you identify all the hidden costs. Benefit, a lot of benefit tends to be intangible, but which need to be identified and such that it can be used to justify the project. Let's look at business process, in this case, using this kind of customer's order fulfillment cycle as an example. When we look at a business process, we want to consider the process from the end to end. In this case, customer may be interested in us because our marketing and sales effort, and eventually we will produce the product and service they need. From our inventory warehouse, we ship it to them, and eventually we got paid. This is sometimes referred to as order to cash cycle. We need to consider this end-to-end process to complete the cycle in an engineering project. This is further based on a Harvard Business Review article called "Stable Yourself to the Order." You're encouraged to actually download this article from our library and then to study it, which identified the full cycle for order management, from planning the order or the sales, and generating actual order, estimating the cost and the pricing, eventually receive customer order, prioritize it to decide which order will get your attention in terms of ship it faster, schedule the shipment or productions, and eventually fulfill the order. There's several activity involved: building the customer, getting paid, or sometimes handling the return goods or warranty claims, and as well as post-sale services. This pretty much complete the whole cycle. A company would not exist without a customer, without customer's order. So it is critical that we take a look of our order management cycle as part of our re-engineering effort. And this picture shows that it is very important to have a customer-focused viewpoint when we try to look at a business process. And to our customer, they don't really care what's going on within the organization. It is the frontline worker they're dealing with. So we want to make sure the managers and other people from other departments all work together as a team to support the frontline worker and empower the frontline worker to serve the customer, to deliver the value and the quality product and service to them in a timely manner. Another expanded view of a business process is as a company, is try to look at who are our customer or even who are our customer's customer. And also at the back end, try to work closely with our supply and partner. A lot of time we will be competing with our competitor, but also collaborate with our competitor in some joint project as well. And the notation here means this N stands for needs and perceived needs of our customer. Company need to understand what are those needs or perceived needs and make sure we have the capability in meeting customers' needs. And together with our supplier partner and working closely with our customer, we can actually create a so-called virtual enterprise that will include ourselves, our customer, and our supplier and partner. In this case, we're sharing the cost, the facility, the skill set, the market access, and the technology with our suppliers and with our customer as well. One of the reengineering principles that we mentioned earlier is to organize around outcome and customer, not task. Okay. This diagram shows this principle the best. We need to actually turn the organizational chart around into reverse triangle. Customer on the top, frontline worker are facing our customer. And the first is to identify who are our customers, and then define what are the desirable outcomes that they would like to get from us. We need to actually consider redesign the output, which will be our product or services, and then we start to define the necessary activity or task that we need to perform. Those activities and tasks will be part of the business processes or function within the organization, and those activity and process will be performed by various department or individual within the organization. So they will have specific defined job responsibility. And once we have those new job responsibility defined, then we can consider how we should structure the organization to support those business process, to execute those business process successfully. So the reengineering, what comes first is to actually start thinking from the customer's back. I've seen a lot of situations, a new management team come in. The first thing they try to do is to restructure the organization without going through this rigorous thought process to understand the customers, the desirable outcome, which means the better product and services to the customer, and what activity process we should put in place to make that happen, and what kind of skill set and job responsibility people should have. And the last actually could be the restructuring of the organization. This Reengineering Diamond is a very important diagram, showed us the importance of change management concept in reengineering project. In reengineering, we tend to certainly focus on business process and function first. But actually, we can start from any of the circle here. And we mentioned earlier, we should focus on the customer and looking the process from the customer perspective, and also considering the enabling information technology. Once we re-engineer the business process, then we need to find out the job function may change, the skill set required by the employee may change, and certainly the organizational structure may change accordingly. Those changes may demand a new performance management system measuring the employee's performance, the business performance, and certainly the rewarding structure need to be redesigned accordingly. Through those reward and incentive, we will be able to foster new value and belief within the organization and foster a more innovative culture within the organization. That organizational culture will be a long-lasting competitive advantage a company may have. And eventually, that new culture will enlighten us for continuous innovation and improvement of our business processes.